That shattered my world. Like, I can't even explain the grief that I experienced.
Dawn Bova is an internationally published artist, a 4-time best-selling author, a nurse practitioner, and an angel mom. She has transformed unimaginable loss into healing practices that now help others recover and live impactful lives. What was your lowest moment? Take us there.
You know, not being seen for that, I think, is one of the hardest parts of grief. When I sat down at that kitchen table, we painted for 2 hours. I get emotional just talking about it. It was like the first time I experienced peace and joy while sitting still. And I thought, wow, there is really something to this.
You decided there's another way, and you took the reins and went with it.
After that aha moment, I did the work, you know? It's tiny little transformations along the path. You want to move forward, and it's just a really dark place to be.
Hello and welcome to Radical Magic TV. I'm Shawna Smith. Joining me here today is Dawn Bova. Hello, Dawn. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Dawn is an internationally published artist, a 4 times international best-selling author, a nurse practitioner, and an angel mom. She shares her experience and her expertise helping others embrace creative practices and proven self-care practices for grief recovery and to live an impactful life. Dawn, that is a lot. That's a mouthful. You sound amazing already.
Thank you. I'm just putting one foot in front of the other. That's my motto.
What's an angel mom?
So my life has been tremendously impacted by grief. My dad died in a car accident when he was 46, a week before my senior year of college. And at that time, I thought, man, that's the worst grief anybody can ever experience. But I since had 4 children, and my 3rd son, Bradley, developed opioid addiction. And he fought a courageous battle, ended up in Florida in doing well in a halfway house. And at that time, there was no regulation. Long story short, he overdosed and died in that halfway house. In addition to, another young man and somebody that worked there. That shattered my world. Like, I can't even explain the grief that I experienced. And from that point, I did so much self-discovery and self-work and seeking modalities to get better, because I had somebody tell me, and I know it was well-intentioned, that, when somebody loses a child, they say it takes 5 years before you can feel somewhat normal. And I thought, 5 years? 5 years of my life? And I really wasn't willing to give up 5 years. Thank goodness. Because after Brad died, we lost another young man that I considered a son, Brian. And then a couple years after that, my grandson died at the babysitter's. So I have just done so much reading and exploring and studying and practicing so many modalities for healing. And I thought, this stuff works. It would be selfish of me to keep it to myself. And that's when I decided to forge into grief recovery.
What was your lowest moment? Take us there.
I think, and it's not one singular moment, but when people die and somebody is grieving, society expects us to move on or get through it or have closure, right? And when you lose something or someone that you love with every cell of your body, that doesn't resonate. And after year one, that seems to be a society expectation. 1 year and you're getting better, right? And I had my pastor say, year two is really challenging as well. New challenges because people forget and you're stuck. You're stuck in this horrible abyss. I describe it like being weighed down by chains and ball bearings that nobody can see. It's an invisible pain. Not being seen for that, I think, is one of the hardest parts of grief. And, for an example I can give you is my family was hurting too. My daughter was in so much pain. And to see me in the amount of pain that I was in, she had to back away. And I felt like, oh my gosh, now I'm losing her too. So it was really, that part of grief that nobody talks about, nobody acknowledges, is really a hard part in the path. But there's so many nuances and, it ebbs and flows. But that's a big one, feeling like you're stuck on this path, weighed down. You can't move forward. You can't move back. You don't want to forget them, so you want to keep their memory alive, but yet you want to move forward. And it's just a really dark place to be.
Mm-hmm. You really feel grief deeply in the body, don't you?
Yes.
Explain that.
So one of the things that I studied is it's almost like a PTSD response. And there's a book that I've read called The Body Keeps the Score. And it's been around for years. But what this scientist said is, or he's a psychologist, I guess. But what he said is, if we don't find ways to release the grief, it will manifest in your body. So take, for example, somebody gets sick to their stomach, like little kids, they'll get sick to their stomach at school because they're nervous. Or people have chronic back pain because they're just fatigued all the time. Or you end up with chest pain or acid reflux, ulcers. Those are all real physical responses to pain, suffering, loss that you don't learn how to release in healthy ways. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the body really does keep the score.
Is that what you were feeling? That
I had chest pain. I can honestly say I had chest pain, and I was like, oh my gosh, am I having a heart attack? And then I did some reading, and there are people that have had heart attacks after losing someone. It's called broken heart syndrome, and it's a real syndrome. So, I had all these signs of like, you've got to do something. You've got to get better. And I'll tell you, my sister is a classically trained artist. She went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, and we both love art, but I put it on the tape. I put it aside. You're busy. You have 4 kids. You have a career. Who has time for creativity? And I was going over to her house just for a little respite, and she said, we're going to paint. I'm like, no, I'm not painting. She said, yes, we're going to paint. And I'm like, no, I'm not. I got the big X, and I get to her house, and she has the whole kitchen table set up with paints and, paper plates, just craft paints and a couple canvases. And I said, okay, I'll paint. And prior to that moment, one of my coping mechanisms was, and I am kind of a busy person naturally, but I threw myself into helping people in recovery. Like, tons of volunteer hours and on the go all the time. And it was helpful. But somewhere in that process, I lost myself, right? And so when I sat down at that kitchen table, we painted for 2 hours. I get emotional just talking about it. It was like the first time I experienced peace and joy while sitting still. Because before that, I couldn't sit still. It was just too painful. And that's when the light switch clicked, right? And I thought, wow, there is really something to this. And then I read more, I like to read. So I read some more books and I did some more research on the effects of creativity and the brain and how it's imperative. Like it is imperative. And there's another book called Your Brain on Art. And I think that's by Joanne Ross, or I should have written these names down, but Your Brain on Art. And what they talk about in this book is the fact that creativity is imperative for everything that we do. And they've done research on accountants, and they separated them, and they had some accountants do some kind of creative activity and the other ones not, and their productivity went up. They got better. And so I just started, from that point on, I just threw myself into creating things. And then I did more research, and I found, every spiritual leader that I follow, every single one has meditation in their life. And I'm like, I can't meditate. But I started slowly, and I started doing guided meditations. And then I took a course on meditation, guided meditation. And then I started practicing other types of meditation. And then I took another certification course on sky meditation. And, these are things, little tiny habits that I have infused into my life on a daily basis. And it doesn't have to be, at first I thought, I got to meditate an hour a day. Who has time for that? No, if you just take like 10 minutes every morning and do a simple meditation, it completely changes the trajectory of your day, And then with Jessica, we started doing the Write It Real experiment, and that is daily journaling with intention. I've always been a journaler, maybe not consistently every day, but I would journal like I would spew out horrible feelings and, write all this stuff. And I'm not saying that doesn't have a purpose, but I completely flipped the script on how I journaled. And now I journal with intention. And the first thing I do when I get up in the morning is I write 6 things that I'm grateful for every single day. And that also rewires the brain. So there's so much science backing these creative methods. And that's why I decided to create this little container, the Creative Grief Recovery. I guess it's the Creative Grief Freedom Formula is what I call it, because it really does set you free. Now, I'm not saying that you lose grief or you get over it or get past it. But what I am saying is that you can learn how to carry grief gracefully, and you can learn how to deal with the ebbs and the valleys and the peaks of grief, because, as you saw just a little bit ago, it can still come back with a thought or a smell, or I'll see a picture and it's just whoosh, but I recover so much more quickly now because I have all these tools in my tool belt.
Yeah. Would you say that was kind of when you had enough, is when you went to your sisters and did that painting project? Is that when it kind of clicked for you?
Yes, that was a pivotal moment in my grief recovery, because I am a firm believer that you can't think your way through something. You have to do your way through something. And just sitting down, the act of sitting down and painting and having that experience was pivotal for me. And it was at that point that I started to take more time for myself and value my alone paint time. And I set up a studio in my house, and I bought paint supplies, and I took painting classes, and then people started buying my art. And it's like, you just don't know what's possible unless you do.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but the elephant in the room and the biggest lie that we're told about this, what would you say that is?
Basically that you get over it, or you have closure, or you move on. When Brad died in that halfway house, I had a lot of people telling me, you should go down there, you should sue them, you should do this, you should do that. And that really wasn't what I wanted to focus on, because they're like, maybe that would bring you some closure. And that's not the kind of, now I'm not knocking anybody that would do that, if that's whatever they want, but I don't feel that way. That there's no closures, because do we stop loving? No, I love my son. Even though he's not here, I still love him.
Mm-hmm.
I love my grandson, even though he's not here. And Brian, my adopted son, and my dad, we still love these people, but we learn how to navigate these complex emotions with healthy things so that you can break free of those chains and that heavy cloak that's weighing you down. I think that's the biggest misconception. And until you experience it, you don't really know.
Yeah. How long did you believe that lie?
Boy, until I had my own experience with grief, really, with profound grief. And I meant it empathetically with people, right? I didn't mean to be a know-it-all. I just wanted to be helpful, but my experience has taught me different.
What's the real cost when people believe that lie?
I feel like if you believe that, you're probably likely to get stuck in this perpetual loop, as opposed to what I describe as a spiral. I feel like my grief is a spiral. For example, grief is this big black ball, right? And when it first happens, it's right here in front of your face. And if you do the work and commit to yourself, you'll spiral. And the ball doesn't change size. But what happens is your life expands. So it moves out here. And sometimes it'll come here and then it out here. And you'll spiral and you'll hit it much less frequently, right? But if you believe that you're going to get past it, you're going to have closure. When you hit that, you're like, what am I doing wrong? What's wrong with me? How can I be feeling this way? And I think it's important for people to realize that you're not wrong. You're not behind. You're exactly where you need to be. And you just need some tools to help you, have recovery and transform that grief into something beautiful.
Yeah. Paint us a picture. What does a typical day look like for someone that is trapped in that?
You don't want to go to sleep because when you wake up, it's going to be there again. And you don't want to get out of bed because you're going to face a day of this low, horrible feeling. You don't want to see people because although they mean well and they're well intended with what they say, they don't understand. Or if you see them and they look at you like your grief is invisible and you just feel hopeless. Yeah.
It's a really dark place to be.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right. It is something that, I see in society when people lose something close to them. And maybe even it's not a human, maybe it's an animal or a pet or something like that. And I remember, someone saying to me like, wow, get over it. You're not over this.
Yeah.
No, I'm actually not. Oh, maybe I should be. And then that starts getting in my head like, oh yeah, you're right. You said it. What's wrong with me? I can't get over this,
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So amazing work that you're doing. That's for sure. Let's go to your breakthrough moment. The pivotal moment when everything shifted for you. You decided there's another way. And,
Yes.
and you took the reins and went with it.
Yeah. And I realize that not everybody has the drive that I do to, I had that aha moment with my sister. And then it wasn't like aha, oh, everything's better now. After that aha moment, I did the work, I took courses, I read books, I put myself into positions. I said yes when, people said I should say no. And I learned and I practiced these principles in my daily life. And do I do it perfectly? No. But I try every single day to infuse positive in my life.
Yeah.
And I feel like another misconception is that we just have this huge transformation. My experience with grief is it's tiny little transformations along the path. And that's what I have and I continue to have. Like I'm still growing. I'm still evolving, changing, transforming every single day.
So that leads me, how quickly did you start seeing results? Was it tiny steps at a time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, tiny steps. But I started feeling hopeful, I started feeling like I'm going to be okay. I'm going to be able to carry this grief and still love my grandson, my son, and yet live a happy, joyous, and free life.
You've developed your unique magic method. Now, remind us what you called it again.
Lessons, grief lessons, right? Which kind of really explains what I've just talked to you about, right? I'm always learning lessons. I'm never going to stop learning, but my lessons, are little things that you can implement into your life every single day. And do you have to do them all perfect? No. That's the beauty of it. And can you go at your own pace? Yes. But as long as you're putting one tiny little baby step in front of the other and implementing these tiny little lessons into your life, it's going to be great. It is. I'm living proof.
Now, if someone is listening right now and wants to start implementing your method, what's the very first thing they should do today?
So the L stands for listening, leaning in, and liberation. And a tiny thing you can do is be still in the morning and perhaps get yourself a journal and just write down, a couple things. I like to do 6. I don't know why, but 6 things that you're grateful for every day. And then I've also created a 30-day journal prompt specifically geared toward grief recovery that I can send people for free if they want it. And it comes in your inbox every day because, initially I didn't know what to write about. So I needed some guidance.
What are the common obstacles that people will face when they start taking some of these steps?
I think the biggest obstacle lies within, right? We don't feel like doing it. We don't want to do it. We have no energy. We don't have the drive. So it's a matter of taking the action and the results will follow.
And how will they know they're making progress?
I also believe that we thrive in a loving, nurturing community. So when you're in a community with like-minded people that are experiencing some of the same feelings, emotions that you are feeling, that is very helpful. And, one of my favorite sayings is we rise by lifting others. And it doesn't matter where you are on your grief journey, but you can be helpful to somebody else. So joining a community, and I have one of those too. I just started it. So, yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's so great. That's one of my favorite sayings too. A rising tide lifts all boats.
Yes.
So powerful.
Right.
What's one of the biggest mistakes people make when they start on this journey?
I think another one of my favorite phrases is comparison is the thief of joy.
Yeah.
And we tend to compare ourselves to others. I remember people looking at me saying, my gosh, she's doing so good. And I'd be like, no, I'm not. And then they'd look at somebody else and say, oh, she's really suffering. We can't compare our grief. We just have to be where we're at and take tiny steps and don't compare your journey to anybody else's. It's unique to you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big one.
Yeah, that's so true. And I love that you realized you had gained all of this knowledge. You had gone through all of this and you realized you wanted to share it with other people. Take us to that point.
I'll be completely honest. I wasn't sure that I was the person to do this. You look at, who am I to do this? And I did have some encouragement from my community of support saying, yes, Dawn, you're the perfect person for this. Do it. So with a little bit of coaxing, I just started writing things down, writing ideas down, things that have helped me, talking to other people, things that have helped them. And then I put it all together. So, yeah.
Wow. Who specifically do you feel called to help?
At this point, I feel my ideal person to help would be somebody that is experiencing tremendous grief, probably a little bit more mature, because I can relate to that life a little bit better. I do have a good connection with women, and that, somebody that really wants to, have these tiny transformations and is open to creativity and has an open mind to the things that I want to present to them.
Is there anything that breaks your heart about this industry?
Not really. I think people that get into the grief recovery industry are mostly well-intended. They feel called for some reason. I think for my personal experience, because my son died of an overdose, and I feel this is same for people that have died from suicide, there's a huge stigma and shame attached to that. And that kind of breaks my heart. Not only for the people that have died, that were suffering, but for the loved ones that are here dealing with that. Because that adds an additional cloak of invisibility. It's hard to talk about it, and there's shame and stigma, and people talk about it openly. I'm going to tell you, When Brad first passed away, I was distributing Narcan, and I gave it out to a lot of people, and I got private messages that I saved some people. Thank you for giving me that Narcan. It saved my brother's life, or something like that. But I went on to a community page and I was talking about Narcan, and I had somebody say to me, your son chose to stick that needle in his arm. So he got what he got. And I'm going to tell you that was devastating. But since then, I have learned to develop a thick skin, because people don't know what they don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, that was hard.
That is hard. Dawn, what would the world look like if people knew what you know now?
We would have more compassion for one another. We would have more creativity. We would make it a part of our daily lives. And we would know how to lift each other in a positive, caring way, and have more joy and freedom in our lives.
Mm-hmm. And when someone works with you and they go through your method, what kind of a transformation can they expect?
Well, as I said before, I don't believe that it's a huge transformation, but what they will come to believe and experience is that there is hope after loss. There's hope, and you can still carry your grief, but carry it gracefully, and you will have tiny transformations over the period of your lifetime. And life just gets better and better. And honestly, grief, as much as this sounds crazy, has been my biggest teacher, because it's taught me to be more compassionate, more empathetic. I see things differently now than I ever did. I don't look at a sunset the way I used to. It's much more magical and powerful. I don't look at a sunrise. You know, the clouds, if it's a cloudy day, you get up, oh, it's cloudy. I'll look up at the clouds and feel a connection.
That is so beautiful. And for someone who resonates with your message and wants to go deeper, how can they get in touch with you?
I have an email list. If they want to get on the email list, or, just email me personally, they can at heartworkbydawn@gmail.com. And they can also download my free 30-day journal with prompts every day. And one thing I do want to point out is, people have done that journaling exercise and they're like, I couldn't keep up with it every day. And I just quit doing it. And I'm like, no, stop that. Just do what you can. If you just can do one of the prompts a week to get started, just get started. It's not perfect. We don't live in a perfect society. We just do some action. That's all I ask.
Mm-hmm. And what can people expect when they work with you directly, Dawn?
So I've created a sacred community. We do creative practices. I have some suggestions and some little pushes or nudges of things that they can do. And I just tell people it works if you work it. So the more you do, the better outcome you will have. But there's no right or wrong way. And I promise, I just know that if you do the work, you will have transformations. There's just no doubt about it. Your life will get better.
One of my mentors always says, everything works if you work it. Nothing does if you don't.
Right.
That's simple, right?
Yeah.
Couple more questions. What's changed in your business or your life since working with the Radical company that you didn't expect?
Well, as I said before, I probably never would have had this creative grief freedom formula had it not been for the Radical Company. They pushed me, they encouraged me, and, they helped me with some of the formulation of that. I sold a ton of art because of the Radical Company. I became a best-selling author. I would have never thought I would write a book, right? Let alone be in 4 international best-selling books. But, because of the Radical Company, I am. And there's just so much opportunity that I've gained and insight that I've gained and clarity on what I want to do to help other people through the company. And that's the biggest gift that it's given me.
If you were talking to somebody who was thinking about joining the Radical Company, what would you tell them about your experience?
Go in with an open mind and, take advice and implement some of the suggestions that they're telling you. And you can experience your own ideas and transformations and growth.
I love that you have the creativity in your program, because I do believe that creation, as you said, is really a way to continue moving through life and in a positive way. What are some of the creative things that you have people do?
So there's a huge focus on art, and we do collage work, we do painting, we do things with nature, meditation. I have some guided meditation. I call them creative circles, where we share what we've made and how we've experienced that and what we feel about it. Journaling in a creative, positive way. And then just the community aspect is huge. And then if somebody wants to dive deeper and do coaching with me, I have a special program for that too.
Okay. Online and in person?
Online.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. What a powerful place for someone to come and find you at a time when they need it the most. Yeah. Thank you for the work that you're doing. It's so important.
Yeah. Before Radical Company, and this is one of the big shifts that they've given me, I've done a lot of work. I've done a lot of helping throughout my whole life. I've been a helper, and I've given it away. And one of the things that the Radical Company has taught me is that I deserve to be fairly compensated for my worth. And I never saw that before, right? I just thought we're just supposed to be giving, especially as a female. I think it's even more prevalent than in the male society. And I've learned that, what I have to offer people is valuable. Like, it's something that money can't buy, your freedom, your joy, your happiness. We are here for a finite amount of time. So I don't want to waste it being trapped and weighed down by those chains of grief. Not that there's a way around that. You do have to go through it. But if you can get through it with ease, a little bit more joy, and some community, I think it's worth it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to have that community and that support and someone letting you know that it's okay to take the time to grieve how you need to do it. Mm-hmm. And I do feel like sometimes when people have other expectations for us, we don't get to feel those feelings. Sometimes we'll stop ourselves.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very powerful. Anything else at all you would like to add today?
No, I want to thank you so much for having me. I am really excited about my future and the people that I'm going to be able to help. And if people want to get in touch with me, you have my information.
Absolutely. Dawn Bova, it was a real treat to visit with you here today. Thanks for joining us on Radical TV.
You're welcome.